Have you ever stopped to notice that you're always running, but never actually getting anywhere? That your mornings begin before you're truly awake, with notifications screaming for your attention, emails demanding immediate responses, and a growing sensation that no matter how fast you move, there will always be something more urgent waiting? If you feel like your life has become a constant race against a clock that never stops accelerating, know that you are not alone in this experience. Something deeply disturbing is happening to our species at this exact moment in history, something our ancestors never experienced, and that may be leading us toward an existential abyss we cannot yet fully comprehend. We are living through the first era in human history where the speed of change exceeds our biological capacity for adaptation, and the consequences of this acceleration are more profound than any previous technological revolution. But here's the fascinating paradox I want to explore with you today. While the world accelerates exponentially, the brightest and wisest minds of our age are doing exactly the opposite. They are stopping, they are slowing down, and there's a deep scientific and philosophical reason for this that could completely change your perspective on what it means to live well in the 21st century. To truly understand what's happening, we need to go back in time and observe how speed has always been the marker of great human transformations. For tens of thousands of years, our ancestors lived at a pace that would seem almost meditative to us today. The agricultural revolution, which began about 10,000 years ago, happened so gradually that hundreds of generations were born and died without realizing they were participating in the greatest transformation in human history up to that point. A Neolithic village changed more in 1,000 years than a band of hunter-gatherers changed in 10,000. Even so, a peasant who lived 1,000 years could perfectly recognize the world of his descendants. The tools were similar, the rituals remained, the social structure was fundamentally the same. Change existed, but it moved in geological time, not human time. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and for the first time in history, a single human life began to witness radical transformations. A man who was born when horses were the primary driving force could die seeing automobiles in the streets. This was revolutionary not only technologically, but psychologically. For the first time, one generation could look at the next generation and honestly say they didn't recognize the world that was emerging. But even this revolution, compared to what we live today, was almost glacial in its speed. Changes took decades to consolidate, allowing societies, laws, values, and mental structures to gradually adapt. There was time for reflection, for cultural digestion, for collective wisdom, to process what was happening. Now, however, we are living something completely different. We are in the era of exponential acceleration, where the speed of change not only increases, but increases ever faster. What used to take generations now happens in years. What used to take years now happens in months. And what used to take months now happens in weeks. An application can be launched on Monday and fundamentally transform how billions of people communicate by Friday of the same week. A scientific discovery can be published in the morning and revolutionize our understanding of reality before sunset. This is not just a quantitative change in speed, it's a qualitative change in the very nature of human experience. We are being forced to live in a state of perpetual adaptation, where our minds and bodies never have time to truly settle into any reality before it's replaced by another. And here's the crucial point. Our brain, which evolved over millions of years to handle gradual and predictable changes, simply wasn't designed for this speed of transformation. Our neural networks, our hormonal systems, our emotional architecture, all of this is being overloaded by demands that exceed our biological processing capacity. What happens when you force a machine to operate far beyond its designed capacity? It breaks down, and what we see today on a global scale are clear signs that our species is beginning to show symptoms of systemic overload. Rates of anxiety, depression, and burnout are reaching epidemic levels precisely in the most technologically advanced societies. Paradoxically, the more connected we become, the lonelier we feel. The more information we have access to, the more confused we become, the faster we can do things, the less time we seem to have. This is not a coincidence. It's the direct result of trying to run 200,000-year-old biological hardware on cultural software that updates every microsecond. Acceleration is not just a technological phenomenon, it's a neurological phenomenon, and it's literally reconfiguring how our mind processes reality. When you're constantly in quick response mode, your capacity for deep reflection atrophies. When you're always reacting to the next stimulus, your capacity for contemplation disappears. When you're perpetually connected to the information flow, your capacity for connection with yourself deteriorates. It's exactly here that we find the revolutionary insight that's transforming how the most perceptive people of our age approach life. They've realized that speed has become a drug, not metaphorically, but literally. The constant stimulation, immediate response, instant feedback, all of this activates the same neural circuits that are activated by addictive substances. Each notification is a small dose of dopamine. Each like is a reinforcement. Each digital interaction is a chemical validation. And like any drug, speed creates tolerance. You need more and more stimulation to get the same feeling of satisfaction. What was once fast enough now seems slow. What was once intense enough now seems boring. And so you accelerate more and more, chasing a state of excitement that becomes increasingly fleeting and less satisfying. But there's something even deeper happening here. Speed isn't just addicting us, it's fragmenting our consciousness. When you're constantly jumping from one task to another, from one notification to another, from one thought to another, your mind loses the ability to form coherent narratives. You begin to live in disconnected fragments of experience rather than in a continuous and meaningful story. And without narrative, without the ability to connect past, present, and future in an understandable sequence, meaning disintegrates. You may be doing many things, but none of them seem to really matter. You may be constantly busy, but deeply empty. I need to stop for a moment and ask you directly, when was the last time you managed to sit in silence without any distraction for more than 10 consecutive minutes? When was the last time you finished a day and could clearly remember what had happened in the first 2 hours of that morning? If you're having difficulty answering these questions, you're experiencing exactly what I'm describing. The fragmentation of consciousness isn't a side effect of modern life, it's its main product. I know it can be uncomfortable to acknowledge this. Many of us have built our identity around our capacity for multitasking, our response speed, our constant connectivity. But if this symptom of fragmented life resonates with your experience, if you feel like you're losing pieces of yourself in the speed of daily life, share your reflection in the comments. It can be as simple as writing, "I recognize this fragmentation when." Your honesty can help other people name what they're feeling, and sometimes naming the problem is the first step to finding the solution. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Because while most people are being dragged by this current of constant acceleration, a small but growing minority of notable individuals is doing something radically different. They are stopping, not temporarily, not as a pause to later return to the race, but as a fundamentally new life philosophy. We're talking about CEOs of technology companies who spend 2 hours a day meditating, renowned scientists who deliberately work on projects that will take decades to complete, writers who write by hand in paper notebooks away from any screen, billionaire investors who make their most important decisions only after long periods of silent contemplation. These aren't nostalgic hippies or reactionary Luddites. They are some of the most sophisticated and successful minds of our age, and they've discovered something profound. Intentional slowness isn't the opposite of efficiency. It's the only real form of efficiency in a hyper-accelerated world. What these individuals have understood is that there's a fundamental difference between being busy and being productive, between being fast and being effective, between processing information and generating wisdom. In a world where everyone is trying to do everything faster, the real competitive advantage belongs to those who can do the right things with depth and intentionality. They realized that speed kills quality, not just the quality of work, but the quality of experience, the quality of relationships, the quality of thought, and fundamentally, the quality of life. When you intentionally slow down, something extraordinary happens. Your mind stops operating in survival mode and begins operating in growth mode. Instead of just reacting to the environment, you begin to create the environment. Instead of being driven by external impulses, you begin to be guided by internal values. Instead of living in disconnected fragments, you begin to live a coherent and meaningful story. Modern neuroscience confirms what contemplatives have always known. The brain has two fundamental modes of operation. The task network mode, which is active when you are focused on specific goal-oriented activities, and the default network mode, which is active when your mind is apparently doing nothing. But this apparent doing nothing is actually when the most important processes of the human mind happen. Memory consolidation, experience integration, creative insight generation, personal meaning, formation, and the construction of a coherent sense of identity. When you're constantly stimulated and always busy, you systematically suppress this second mode of brain operation. And when this happens, you don't just lose the ability to deeply process your experiences, you lose the ability to truly know yourself. Because self-knowledge doesn't emerge from action, it emerges from reflection. Wisdom isn't born from information, it's born from contemplation. Creativity doesn't arise from stimulation, it arises from silence. And this is exactly what the wisest of our age have rediscovered. They understood that in a culture obsessed with doing more, faster, the real revolution is in doing less, slower, but with infinitely more depth and intentionality. They've created what we can call islands of slowness in an ocean of speed, temporal and mental spaces where haste is not allowed, where contemplation is valued, where depth prevails over superficiality. This is not a rejection of technology or progress. It's a more mature and sophisticated relationship with both. It's the difference between being a passive consumer of speed and being an active curator of experience. It's the difference between letting digital culture determine the pace of your life and consciously choosing your own pace. And here's the most beautiful paradox. When you intentionally slow down, you don't become less effective in the accelerated world. You become more effective because you begin to operate from a center of clarity rather than chaos. You make decisions based on wisdom, not impulse. You create real value, not just activity. You live your life according to your deepest priorities, not according to the loudest demands. And perhaps most importantly, you develop the ability to be truly present for your own existence instead of simply surviving it. This is the great irony of our time. In an era where we have access to more possibilities than any previous generation, many of us have lost the ability to consciously choose among these possibilities. We are being carried by the current of cultural acceleration instead of deliberately navigating toward our chosen destinations. But the good news is that this is reversible. Intentional slowness is not an innate talent, it's a learned skill. And like any skill, it can be developed through practice. It begins with small moments of conscious pause during the day. It can be as simple as breathing consciously for 30 seconds before checking your phone, or walking once a week without any podcast, music, or company, just you and your own thoughts, or eating one meal a week in complete silence, paying total attention to flavors, textures, and sensations, or writing 3 pages by hand once a week, letting your mind wander freely without any specific goal. These practices may seem small, almost insignificant, compared to the magnitude of the problem we're facing. But they are the seeds of a personal revolution that can fundamentally transform your relationship with speed and, by extension, with your own life. What we're really discussing here is not just a matter of productivity or personal well-being, although both are important. We're talking about the future of human consciousness. We are at a historical inflection point where we can consciously choose what kind of mind we want to cultivate, what kind of experience we want to have, what kind of life we want to live. The exponential acceleration that characterizes our age is not going to slow down. If anything, it will intensify. Artificial intelligence will make change even faster. Biotechnology will make possibilities even more vast. Virtual reality will make experiences even more immersive. In other words, the external pressure to accelerate will only increase. And that's exactly why the ability to intentionally slow down becomes not just valuable, but essential. Not as an escape from modern reality, but as the only way to navigate it with wisdom and purpose. The wisest people of our age are not rejecting the future, they are preparing for it. They understood that in a world where machines will be increasingly fast, the distinctive human advantage will be in our ability to be slow when slowness is appropriate, deep when depth is necessary, contemplative when contemplation is valuable. They realized that while machines process information, humans create meaning, and the creation of meaning cannot be accelerated. It requires time, attention, reflection, and above all, presence. The great challenge of our age is not how to do more things more quickly, but how to live more deeply. It's not how to process more information, but how to generate more wisdom. It's not how to be more efficient, but how to be more human. And full humanity, truly lived life, is only possible when you have the courage to stop in the middle of the universal rush and ask, what really matters? What do I really value? How do I really want to live? And then, based on those answers, make the conscious choices necessary to align your external life with your internal wisdom. This is not a journey you take once and then it's complete. It's a continuous on this continuous journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with more wisdom and purpose in a world that often leaves us disoriented and divided. Because in the end, the question is not whether we can stop the world from accelerating. We cannot. The question is whether we can learn to move through it with grace, purpose, and wisdom. And that is a choice that is completely in your hands. Humans are the most intelligent animals on the planet. They are also the most delusional entities on the planet. A super intelligence is likely to be super delusional as well. Nothing in human history indicates that intelligence is a good antidote to delusion or necessarily puts you on a path towards the truth. I think that the impulse towards truth comes really from consciousness. And since there is no evidence that AI has consciousness, and maybe it will develop, maybe as we speak, the first conscious AI is being kind of born somewhere. But so far we have no convincing evidence that it is conscious, that it's capable of suffering. One of, I think, the big delusions of places like Silicon Valley is this overemphasis on intelligence, which is partly because there are extremely intelligent people there, who their life is built on intelligence, and they tend to overvalue intelligence. And this is a very dangerous thing. My kind of historical instinct is that a super intelligent AI, if it lacks consciousness, it will not pursue the truth. It will very quickly start to pursue other things, which will be shaped by delusions of various types.
Or if you thought someone was eating the dogs and the cats and the pets, like
That's the third kind of information. That's the intersubjective. I mean, so you have objective,
Yes.
you have subjective, then you have the intersubjective.
okay, what's
The intersubjective realm, this is things that exist in the communication network between people. So this is where you find the image of Jesus, and this is where you find the US dollar, and this is where you find the people eating dogs and cats.
right?
It's something that is not objectively true. But it's not just the fantasy of a single individual or the feeling, only I feel it. It's in the communication, in the information network between all of us, or some of us. If enough people believe it, if enough people talk about it, it connects. Again, even if we continue with these dogs and cats, you know, you had maybe the most important conversation in the world, meant to help the citizens of the United States decide who would control the nuclear weapons that could destroy the world.
Exactly.
And the only thing that most people remember from this hour of debate was the dogs and cats.
Welcome to America.
There is this naive expectation that if a network spreads bad information, fake news, conspiracy theories, it will destroy itself. And this is not the case. Some of the most powerful networks in history were completely delusional, and still they were immensely powerful. Because power in history, in human societies, it can mean different things. It can be the technical power to manipulate external reality, and for instance, to create an atom bomb. To create an atom bomb, you need to know physics. If you spread lies and fictions about physics, you will not be able to build a bomb. But power in human networks also depends on the ability to get a lot of people to agree on something and cooperate on something. If you want to build an atom bomb and you just know physics, you will not succeed. You need millions of people to help you. You need people to mine uranium and to build nuclear reactors and to grow wheat and potatoes, so all the miners and the physicists will have something to eat. How do you get millions of people to cooperate? In history, it's often done with fictions, with stories, and a story doesn't need to be true in order to succeed in uniting people. To build a bomb, you need to know the truth about physics or the bomb won't explode. But a powerful story can explode even if it's based on fictions and fantasies.